Yesterday, I was honored when Pamela asked me to speak at the memorial, but later on in the evening, I wondered if I'll be able to find the right words to say as a tribute to a true friend and to a great man. For the past 22 years, I had the privilege of calling Ben a close friend. Earlier, when you asked me to to give you a brief about me, so I'm a scientist and I'm a businessman, and at the moment I reside in Switzerland. I'm also a South African. In the past few years, while I lived in Switzerland, Ben often called me, and when he asked me, or when I asked him if everything is okay, he would laugh and just say, "We in South Africa are all fine. I'm just checking on you." Over the years, we spent many good times together in South Africa and many other parts of the world. Since first time 22 years ago, when Ben and I and another three people crumbled into a small rented car in Paris, and I drove 40 minutes from the center of Paris to a small restaurant on the outskirts of Paris, then I realized that Ben really appreciated good food. I remember the good times we had in Trinidad, when at the time, a part of being senior minister in charge of two important portfolios, art and culture and science and technology, he became also the chairperson of the Commonwealth Science Council. Earlier today, when I spoke to the then Director General of um, of, of the Science Council, Ken Lam, he he requested me to to give his condolences, his family condolences, to Sheila, to Pamela, and to the rest of the family. I can go on and on about what Ben did and contributed towards the advancement of South African research and development, technology, for which he received many praises and few honorary doctorates. Our good friend Franz Swanepoel and many others can tell you more about it. Ben and I met many times also in Japan. So I would like to say something about Ben's contribution to the relationships between South Africa and Japan. As a South African ambassador, Ben contributed a lot to the cooperation and collaboration between various Japanese and South African businesses and industries, which is the role of a good ambassador. But his most unique contribution was the promotion of the most desired skill enhancement program and establishing a collaborative exchange programs between Japanese and South African universities. So here's something a few people know. What an honor it was to become the first man from the whole African continent to receive from the Japanese emperor the Order of the Rising Sun. This is the first class Grand Cordon. It is the highest honor anyone can get in Japan. This only confirms what a special man he was. Our great friend, or friends, Masafumi Nagao and his wonderful wife that I saw earlier on the panel, Benny, can tell you more about how important such a merit is. In recent years, we often spoke a lot about writing a book. He wanted to write a book about his life and his experiences. A month ago, he sent me a draft of a book. He was a book that he was writing about his experience in Japan. But as we many times spoke, it was clear to me and to him that he could write many books. He could write a book about every chapter of his life and every position he held. He could write a book about his medical experience in KwaZulu-Natal. He could write dozens of books about his political experiences or his diplomatic career, or even about the experience he had at the parastatals where he was the chairperson of the board. Ben understood to the core the soul of the nation and the fiber of its people. He was a people's person. He listened. He always took notes. He read a lot. He was an outstanding intellectual, a scholar. He was very wise, a humble man with extremely sharp mind. Ben always felt the heart pulse of South Africa. He knew that South Africa has many rough patches, but he also knew that South Africa has a great potential. He knew how to do politics. He knew how to maneuver through intricate political situations. He knew that after all, politics is the art of the possible. South Africa has all it needs to be a winning nation. But to succeed, it needs great leaders, strong leaders, brave leaders, leaders with integrity, leaders with a vision, leaders who are role models to the young, people who are respected worldwide, leaders like Ben. Ben was a close friend, a true friend, a friend who I will never forget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very sorry to have lost a dear friend, and I hope as the time goes on, we will all heal, but it will take us years and years, and it will take us a lifetime before we forget such a wonderful person, an intellectual, as you have said, an average scholar, who was very humble. And we know that he is one of our own. Thank you very much for the words of comfort. Ladies and gentlemen, family, I will now invite Mr. Paramani Hadebe. Mr. Paramani Hadebe is a senior corporate executive who has served in senior management position in both the public and private sectors. Most recently, he was Group Chief Executive Officer of Eskom Holdings. Before that, he was a CEO of Corporate and Investment Banking South Africa at Barclays Absa Africa, where he also led the CIP client strategy for Africa. Prior to that, Mr. Hadebe was the CEO for the Land and Agricultural Bank. Ngubane spent most of his career in several challenging roles at the National Treasury of South Africa from 1996 to 2008. When he left the National Treasury to join the Land Bank, he was the Deputy Director General, Asset and Liabilities. I will now invite Ngubane Makulukulu to pay his last tribute to the late Dr. Ben Ngubane. Over to you, Makulukulu.
Ngibonge kakhulu mphathisihlalo Mbombo. Mrs. Ngubane, umndeni wakaNgubane, abantwana nezizukulu. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a sad day. Indeed, it is a sad day to say goodbye to a man who I did not only enjoy a collegial relationship, but I had a fatherly connection with him. Hamba kahle Mbombo, hamba kahle Somahashi, uyibekile induku ebandla, uyiqedile indlela yakho. The Bible, which is a source of reference for some of us, encourages us to use our talents that God has given us to the best of our ability. Without any doubt, Mbombo used his talents during the time he was here in this earth. And that could be a very good lesson for all of us. I met Dr. Ngubane in 1999, in 2009, 2010, when he was appointed the chairman of the Land Bank. At that time, I was a CEO of the Land Bank. But coming from KZN, I knew him, although we had not met since I was a young boy, because he was one of the leaders during the struggle against apartheid when I was young. Having spent 13 years at the National Treasury, that is me, I also knew him as a Premier of KZN, a job he did diligently and very well. We can only dream about that type of management now. I also knew him as the Minister of Science and Technology. The previous speaker, Ophir, has already indicated. We benefited a great deal from that. In fact, most of the plans that he put on play are still being executed as we talk. I also knew him as an ambassador to Japan. The relationship that he created with Japan, especially when it comes to technology, was a kind of a relationship that very few people would be able to match. Hence the award that was bestowed to him. But knowing a person from a distance is quite different from knowing a person very close to you personally. Once you are closer to a person, you get to know the personality of the person. So when he was appointed as my chairman, I was happy because of the reputation that he had. When I finally met him, the first day, I had to run through him the program, the strategy and everything. The first thing that struck me, and it remained with me, is his humility. How he was not saying, you know me. He was just down on earth. He makes you comfortable. And I soon learned that everyone was comfortable around him. There are very, very few people who have that skill, that ability. It's something that we are born with. He had a down-to-earth approach to everyone, to the cleaner when he comes into the office, to the other members of the board, to the ministers. He was down to earth. He never came across as a politician. In fact, I used to ask him now and again, how did you end up as a politician? Because his approach and the way he interacted with people was different. And I used to joke and say, you should have been a priest. And he'll say, I am inside. We used to laugh a lot about that. But Dr. Ngubane was not just an intelligent person. He was a hard worker. We will sit for hours preparing for board meetings or annual reports. Then for each item, he will have a number of questions. You needed to go there prepared, otherwise you'll embarrass yourself. I soon learned that he was not just a medical doctor. I know that the obituary does cover his degrees, but I don't think it covers it well. It just says he has a list of other qualifications. He had a master's in primary healthcare. He had 3 postgraduate diplomas, 2 in health, 1 in economics. He has 5 honorary doctorates. Who can compete with him amongst us? That is the character of the individual we're here to celebrate. Because I don't think we're here to cry. We're here to thank God for giving us this skill, this person who has left a mark in South Africa. Well, of course, as a chairman, under his leadership, we endorsed a strategy. It was very simple. We said we're going to clean up the land bank. We said we're going to stabilize it. And we said we're going to ensure that it's sustainable. Those were 3 things that he agreed upon, and we lived to that. Within 3 years, the institution had turned around. Under his leadership, the land bank was upgraded twice on credit rating. The second time was in 2014, when the sovereign was downgraded. Now a bank relies on the sovereign for it to be upgraded. If the country is downgraded, the banks follow. What happened is the country was downgraded, but the land bank was upgraded. and it noted the changes and developments that were achieved under Dr. Ngubane, which were, for example, the market share of the land bank. He improved it from 15% to 32%. That is the market share. Non-performing loans, he reduced it from 16% to 3%. What is important is that the land bank too, during that period of time, got numerous awards, both in South Africa and out of South Africa. That you cannot take away from this man. We're here to celebrate. The history of the land bank, which is 111 years old now, will always show that at some stage, there was Dr. Ngubane, who was a chair of the land bank, who turned it around. I do accept and note the challenges it's facing currently. We kept contact even after I had left the land bank. In fact, for the job at ABSA, he was my referee. 2 years at ABSA, there was a best job that came to me. And I was thinking, should I take it? I went and I spoke to him. And he told me, he said, listen, such opportunities don't come every day, take it. I told him that, no, I'm not going to take it. I want to build it to be like I'm jumping. A year after that, I left ABSA and I met him. And he said to me, Jalil, I told you so. That was sad, but that is how he was, you know. When I moved to Eskom, he had moved out. He phoned me and he congratulated me. Now, there are a lot of noises and investigations at Eskom. I can tell you now, not even one day did Dr. Ngubane phone me to ask anything, clarity, what's happening here. He didn't. That is the character of a man who we're talking about today. Hence I say, his character was not that of a politician. I'm not saying anything wrong about politicians. I have learned a couple of things from Dr. Ngubane, which I think all of us have learned, and I would like to share with you. Humility. He was not, do you know who I am, kind of a person. Treat people with respect. Importance of education. Work diligently, work hard. Prepare for each and every meeting that you're going to attend. To the family, the passing of Dr. Ngubane is sad. However, we need to celebrate his life. For what he has achieved in this life, his name should always be with us. He hated poverty. He believed in that education. It is due to such thinking and beliefs that I think the family, if they haven't yet established it, they should consider something like Dr. Ngubane Foundation, so that we remember him even in his absence, and we live up to what he wanted to achieve. Ayofa Makawe, Ziyosala Ismo. Fare you well, Mbombo. Fare you well, my father. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Pungane, for educating us about who Dr. Ben Ngubane was. You will agree with me that if you have a family member, you always take people for granted because of our humility as the Ngubanes. And I can attest to all what you have said, that he was an extraordinary human being. I share the sentiment that a large boab tree has fallen. Silahlekelwe kakhulu. Siqemeke ingozi engeqiwa ntwala. Siyabonga kakhulu Pungane ukusivulela elinye ikhasi ebesingalazi. Besazi ukuthi yena he's a Catholic, he's a Christian, but indlela osubeke ngayo kusimbula amehlo. And I've alluded to this when we started, that the stories that we hear today will be turned into memories that will stay within our hearts forever. Thank you very much, Makhulu. Siyabonga kakhulu. And the next speaker on our program is Mr. Jeff Rothschild. Mr. Jeff Rothschild is a former JSE chairperson, but I would appreciate if you can expand for 2 seconds or so, just to tell us more how you knew the late Mbomvu Ben Ngubane, and then you pay your last tribute. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Jeff.
Sorry, Mr. Master of Ceremonies, thank you. It'll come out in what I have got to say. Firstly, good afternoon to everybody, and a very big thank you to the family for the privilege to speak about Dr. Ben Ngubane, a gentleman, a dear friend for over 3 decades. He was a loving and concerned husband and father, always immaculately dressed, intelligent, punctual, and interested in everything around him. In his varied roles, he applied himself with diligence and commitment, intent always on doing his best. We met in the 90s when he held leadership roles in KZN. He attended and participated in a number of investment conferences in which I was involved. Investment conferences aimed at increasing the investment in our country. I was honored through him in his time as Science and Technology Minister to serve on the National Advisory Council for Innovation, where I was exposed to the scientific developments in the country, including SALT and the SKA. Innovation was uppermost in his mind. The Technology Top 100 Awards, which encouraged and rewarded technological advances in South Africa on an annual basis, was heavily supported by him and the Department of Science and Technology. He moved on to become the South African ambassador to Japan, where, as we've heard from previous speakers, he excelled in developing the relationship between our 2 countries, especially in the scientific field, and with every aspect of development of the youth. On a visit to Japan, I had the good fortune to experience how he was revered in the Japanese society. He gave us invaluable assistance in terms of our JSE delegation, in terms of how we should set up our meetings, how we should behave, and what sort of culture we were coming into and what would be expected of us. We've also heard from a previous speaker that in recognition of his efforts, Japan gave him an internationally recognized award, which few people receive. Nothing was ever too much trouble for him. He will be sorely missed by all who knew him and loved him. May his dear soul rest in peace. My heart goes out to the family. I wish them strength in this difficult time and live in the memory that Ben was a great man. As Pakamani has said, his humility was unbelievable. He was never a person to say, "You know who I am," but he was bigger than life and a wonderful, wonderful friend. Thank you.
Thank you very much for such comforting words. Although we are in tears, but we can feel a smile after listening to you, Jeff, sharing your experience with Ubaba Ben Ngubane. And we really appreciate the kind words that you have put across. I can agree with you that he was a gentleman. I've always seen him dressed smartly. I've never seen him wearing even the Zulu traditional attire in his life. And he was always wearing a coat, no matter what. So I can attest to that he was a gentleman in the house. Some people have described him as a man who was liked across party lines. And I want to agree with what you have said and what Paramani Hadebe has just said, that he was a political stalwart, but a very humble politician. African business explained him as a man who is described as one of those rare politicians who does not have any real enemies. He might have enemies, but there were no real enemies because he would interact across political affiliations with ease. That's the kind of man Ubaba Ngubane was. And we are very grateful to have lived with a person of his caliber. We will now invite Professor Swanepoel, Professor Franz Swanepoel, who is based at the University of Pretoria, to share his tribute to Dr. Ben Ngubane. Professor Swanepoel, over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I first met Dr. Ngubane in 1999 when Minister Toko Didiza was Minister of Agriculture and Land Affairs and Dr. Ben was Minister of Arts, Culture, Science and Technology. I was the Deputy Chairperson of the ARC, the Agricultural Research Council at that point. And we had a meeting, the whole board, with the two ministers to outline their expectation and vision for the Agricultural Research Council in the national system of innovation. After that time, we became closer and closer and have spent a lot of time together. And I've always regarded Dr. Ngubane as one of my mentors. I vividly recall how we have for many hours, often over a meal, discussed the South African reality of poverty, the importance of food security and the challenges that we're facing in this country. I have really learned much from him. In 2010, I was a professor at the University of the Free State in Bloemfontein, and I was very happy when Dr. Ngubane was then awarded an honorary doctorate degree by the University of the Free State for his contribution towards positioning South Africa as a major and influential player in the development of arts, culture, science, and technology internationally. I clearly remember that day of the graduation where we spent time in the Free State with Dr. Ngubane, with his wife Sheila, and with Dr. Uri Ufir, who spoke first this afternoon. Later on, Dr. Ngubane was appointed chairperson of the Land Bank, when Pakamani, who spoke earlier, was the CEO, and we've interacted extensively during that time, probably me being an agriculturist by training. Some of the words that I recall was from him when he says, science and technology are creators of wealth. And I often use those words exactly as he has uttered it. Science and technology are creators of wealth. Finally, I also remember how Dr. Ben could laugh. If there was a good joke or something to laugh about, he could laugh and he enjoyed it so much. May his soul rest in peace. Thank you.
Very much, Bayadanki, Professor. I think we will charge you for intellectual property by using his phrase, creators of wealth, but it is part of what Ben is capable of. Thank you very much for your tribute. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, I just want to invite Mr. Roy Marcus to pay his last respect to Baba Ngubane. Roy Marcus spent most of his working life as an academic. He occupied professorial posts at the University of Witwatersrand, University of Pretoria, University of Warwick, the Da Vinci Institute, and the University of Johannesburg. His relationship with Ben Ngubane spans 39 years, starting from the days that Ben was an active member of the International Red Cross. Roy was Ben's ministerial advisor on science and technology. He was appointed by Ben to chair the National Advisory Council on Innovation and was responsible for nurturing the relationship between Ben and the engineering profession in South African technology business. It gives me pleasure to welcome Mr. Roy Marcus to address us.
Thank you very much indeed, and my sincere commiserations to the family. I want to, by way of a few anecdotes, relate the stories that those of us who were privileged to work with Ben so enjoyed, having a mentor, a colleague, and above all, a unique leader who inspired all of us. I want to tell you about those anecdotes because many of them will never be told, and some of us were very privileged to be part of all of this. I sincerely hope that we will all recognize the double tragedy that occurred on the 12th of July, 2021. Not only was this country set alight, but we lost a great friend and a great leader. I want to tell you a story about a man with immense vision, about a man driven by the belief that everybody has the capability of making a difference. And it's about a man who challenged all of us to find ways of removing obstacles and making things happen. And above all, it's about a man in those heady days of the Rainbow Nation who had an insatiable appetite to do what he could do to put this country of ours on a path of hope and prosperity. He, like many counterparts, put the country before themselves, and in so doing inspired all of us to find ways which we could capitalize on the goodwill which existed not only within the country, but also within the context of so many great nations who believed in the dream of a new South Africa. In 1982, I received a call in my office at Wits University informing me that I was to get a call from a doctor in Ngubane in some remote part of Natal, who was part of the International Commission of the Red Cross. I got this call from this gentleman who told me that he was involved in a major project with the Inkatha Women's Brigade. Here, he was helping these ladies develop an agricultural program, which each of them were allocated a plot of ground, and they were then going to be able to grow their own crops to feed their family. And above all, he had this dream that once they had fed their family, they could actually export these crops. And so they were able to generate income for themselves. Ben phoned me and he said to me, "Professor, I need to get water to these lands." He said, "I've got no electricity. And just by the way, before you get clever, I don't want you to come up with a diesel pump or a petrol pump. It is too difficult to get diesel and petrol into the lands." I shook my head and I said, "Is this man smoking something?" But then I realized he had this unbelievable persuasive power, and he never ever believed that things could not be done. And so he challenged us. And in the end, we became infected with his passion to help people, and we were driven to find an elegant solution. And those of you who know the story, it was an unmitigated or unqualified success. This program was one of those unique things that a young man, a doctor in a remote part of Natal, endeared himself not only to those people in the community, but all of us who worked with him. And then towards the end of June 1994, I get this call from a secretary who says to me, "The minister would like to speak to you." On the other end of the line is the first minister of the Arts, Culture, Science and Technology in the new government of national unity. "I need help," he informs me. "Please meet me in Pretoria." We have a massive agenda and a boss in the form of Nelson Mandela who wants answers, not plans. I will never forget that first meeting in Pretoria. Here we were faced with a man in a hurry who not only had to bring about a miracle in forging a ministry with almost schizophrenic in nature, marrying scientists and artists is no easy task, but also had to come up with a tricky situation where his deputy was none other than Winnie Mandela. You cannot believe the way he handled this most complex situation. It was emotional, to say the least. And so the journey began to building up the Department of Arts, Culture, Science and Technology. It was one of the most amazing experiences that I've ever had in my life. He built a team and surrounded himself with people who in no ways were yes people. He wanted to be challenged by all the people that he associated with him. And he encouraged all of us to think out of the box, and he ingratiated himself with the business community and was determined to deliver on his promises, which he did do. In the end, we called him Minister Delivery because he did exactly that. In those days, things happened simply because the minister adopted an attitude with bureaucrats that he was not interested in why things could not be done. He wanted to find out how they could be done. And he demanded that they come back to him with ways in which these particular problems that he was faced with could be overcome. It was also the most amazing experience because we made decisions in the shortest possible time. People cannot believe that it took only 20 minutes to make the decision to go ahead with the square kilometer array, the largest science project in the world. Under his watch, which many skeptics believed could never ever happen, we saw the development of the South African Large Telescope coming into being. On the international front, we signed bilateral agreements with many countries, of which we have demonstrable impact on the well-being of this country. He would challenge us to be innovative and had this belief that an agreement was only worth the paper it was written on if there was mutual benefit. People from all walks of life in all countries around the world were taken by his humility and his gentle way in handling tricky situations. And so the testament to the significant contribution this man has made to the building of a new democratic order goes on, and I could write a book on this as well. But I want to end off by telling a story which many have probably never ever heard. Every Wednesday morning, as his advisor, Ben would call me early in the morning before a cabinet meeting. We would reflect on the issues that were on the agenda, and we would talk about his response as the minister. On this particular Wednesday, I got the call earlier than normal, and his opening remarks were, "Roy, by the end of today's cabinet meeting, you and I will be out of a job." I nearly dropped the phone. "What are you saying, Ben?" I asked. His reply was short and to the point. He said, "As a medical doctor and a member of the Mbeki cabinet, I cannot turn a blind eye as to how we are dealing with the AIDS epidemic." He informed me that he was going to challenge the president head on. I could hear from his voice that he was deeply distressed and that he could no longer live with this situation. He called at about 5 p.m. that evening to inform me that he had in fact been successful and he had been able to prevail upon the president to get the message across that things had to change and that the stand taken by government on this vexing, where so many lives were being lost, was no longer acceptable. And so you can believe now that he won this day, which had a profound impact on the future of many people in this country. And so, dear friends, it's with a heavy heart that a dear friend and a colleague has passed on. But I end off by asking a few rhetorical questions which have played my mind over the past few days. I ask, how would Premier Ben Ngubane have handled the crisis in KZN? In my book, significantly different from the way it has been handled. I would ask, would South Africa have given up the pebble bed modular reactor or the thin film solar technology? Two profound world-class technologies where millions of taxpayers' money was invested, and in today's energy crisis, South Africa would have been really a different place. In my book, Under the Watch of Ben and Ngubane, no ways would we have lost those technologies. And finally, just maybe finally, as if he was a member of the cabinet today, how would he have handled COVID-19? I'm sure significantly different. Of course, if it was not for the foundations which Ben and his team built, we would not be having this Zoom call today. What we need now, colleagues and friends and dear family, is the emergence of several Ben and Ngubanes who are visionaries and who have the courage of their convictions to take this beautiful country forward. To you, my dear friend Ben, thank you for giving me and so many others the opportunity to be part of the growth of the new South Africa. Thank you for encouraging us to explore new ideas and new ways of doing things better. And above all, thank you for being you. May your dear soul rest in peace.
Thank you very much, Roy. I must say that I'm deeply inspired by the way you have come across in reflecting about what a man Ben Ngubane was, and his intelligence is pushing me to challenge you to write this book. And I hope you'll agree with me that there is a lot to be said about him. We don't pay any justice during this service because of time, but we would like to hear more about how Umbomvu has contributed to the landscape of the public health and the medicine, and also as a politician in the new democratic government. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, I will now cross over to Japan, as we know that Ben was an ambassador of South Africa to Japan. We have Professor Masafumi Nagao, who is going to make his reflections as part of the tribute. Professor Masafumi Nagao is research advisor, International Development Center of Japan, a Japanese nonprofit development think tank with a 45-year history. And Professor Emeritus Hiroshima University is also serving currently as a visiting fellow at the Future Africa Institute of the University of Pretoria. He has a broad academic background ranging from program evaluation, educational development to sustainable development studies. His current engagement includes promotion of knowledge exchange, creation, and sharing between Asian and African universities in the area of sustainability science, especially through collaborative research by next generation researchers in the two regions, Asian and African. Professor Nagao has been a close partner of Dr. Ben Ngubane for promoting cooperation between South Africa and Japan through inter-university collaboration for research, education, and social implementation. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, join me in welcoming Professor Nagao to address us. Over to you, Professor.
Ben, I received the news 3 days ago from our mutual friends, Zenda and Uri, that you were leaving our world to go to the other side. I cannot believe it. I still cannot believe it. I don't want to believe it. So I'm just going to continue our conversation in the presence of your friends, family, and other people who know you. Today, people talk a lot about what you did as a South Africa's ambassador to Japan from 2004 to 2008. You told me once that those 4 years were the most enjoyable moments of your life. From the Japanese side, those 4 years of your ambassadorship in Japan were the most productive and most remarkable for promoting the South Africa-Japan relationships. And your receiving of the Grand Cordon of the Order of the Rising Sun from the Emperor is just a confirmation of all what you have done. To me, that was much more important than that is the fact that you have helped build new relationships, science and technology collaboration, industrial cooperation, and many other things. But most important of all, you created so many new friendships with Japanese and other people who are in Japan. And I could see all that at your farewell party at the official residence of South African ambassador in Tokyo, where more than 300 people came. Former prime minister, ministers, university presidents, industrial leaders, and even students. They didn't want to go away, wanted to stay until the end of the party. That really showed what you did in those 4 years. You and I have been in a joint venture for helping the next generation to move ahead, to get ahead, not just for South Africa and Japan, not just for Africa and Asia, but for global sustainable development. I shall continue with your support from upstairs and with the lesson that I learned from you. You remember the first day I met you at the South African Embassy in September 2004. I was accompanying 10 South African mathematics and science curriculum implementers, subject advisors from the Mpumalanga province, who were in JICA training course for 6 weeks in Japan. And I made an arrangement so that these 10 South African educators could share what they have seen, what they have observed with Ambassador Ngubane. And they did. Before they did, Ben promised them a huge bribe, which made the educators glad and forward-looking. But that was a bait. And Ben sat around the table, 10 curriculum implementers, and from each and every one of them, he demanded a speech about what they have observed, what they have learned. And that was already surprising to me and to the 10 educators. Here they were, sitting with former Minister of Science and Technology, and they were science and math teachers, reporting to the former minister and the 2 administrations. What surprised me more and what surprised them more was that Ben took out this thick note and started taking notes of what was said by each and every one of them. And the way he did it was so frantic and so earnest that the people around the table really got serious. And we went on and on talking about what they saw, what they learned, what they talked about with the Japanese counterparts. It was a most intellectually rewarding experience. It seemed that for men, that was usual practice. So I tell this story to students in Japan, in South Africa, everywhere, that once in a vocation, you never cease to learn. And that becomes your vocation in turn. So Ben, that's the lesson that you taught me and the lesson with which I'm going to continue. So you keep watching from upstairs and tell me if I ever idle, if I ever cease. There's a bit of more time for me to work here before I join you upstairs to share all this. Thank you.
Those are kind of very strong words, joining upstairs, but we are all heading for upstairs. But thank you very much, Prof. And I believe that your wife is still going to address us shortly. I just wanted to check if Professor Mapalala is on.
Yebo Mbomvu ngikhona.
Oh, Msotho, siyabonga kakhulu. Yeah, we will now invite Professor Jabulani Mapalala, who is an Professor Emeritus at the University of Zululand. He was a Vice Dean in the Faculty of Arts, Deputy Chair of Committees in Pietermaritzburg Legislature. He was also serving as a commissioner for the Commission for Traditional Leadership, Dispute and Claims. He is a historian and an author of many books in his field. And he also collated the history of the Ngubane clan, which we appreciate it very much. Msotho, siyabonga kakhulu ukuthi usiqoqele umlando wamabomvu. Siyathemba namanje sizofunda lukhulu. Sizobamba nje isikhathi ngoba basebaningi abazokhuluma Msotho. Ngicela ukushiya ezandleni zakho. Professor, over to you.
Hello.
Yebo, Msotho.
Oh, yebo. Angiqale ngokulilela umndeni wakwaMbomvu ngokwenzekile. Ngithi akwehlanga lungehlanga. Silahlekelwe sonke ngokudlula emhlabeni kukaBen njengoba debizwa kanjalo. Ngiyalila kakhulu ke emndenini wakhe, einganeni zakhe ulungile, uncamisile, nabo bonke. Ngithi hayi asihlale ngenxeba sishayeke engeqiwa ntwala. Mina ngiqala ukumazi ke ngo-1971 ngise-University of Zululand eqala ke ukuvula i-surgery yakhe eNgwelezane. Sasimema ke e-university entweni okuthiwa ama-open lectures. Afika akhulume noma ngasiphi isihloko kugcwale ihholo, lithi phama sibuza imibuzo, aphinde amenywe futhi azokhuluma ngezinto esasifuna zihlaziyeke njengabafundi base-university mayelana nezempilo nezifo ezinye nje. Akhulume kuyoze kuphunywe lapho wonke umuntu ecacelwe. Njengomuntu ke owayewudokotela wami, ngithe sengiganiwe waba udokotela wami. Sasathola ingane esiya kuye nomama wami waya khona lapho waze washona ekhonzwe ngendlela engenakulinganiswa ngoba egcile kubantu abahluphekile, enozwelo oluyisimangaliso kubantu abahluphekile. Uzwelo lakhe lwayisimanga. Abanye babeya esurgery bengenamali, bathi bangayithola bese beyihambisa enama-surgery esikhawini, evula indlela nakuzo zonke indawo elapha abantu benelisekile ngaye. Imfundo ke ubeyikhonze kakhulu ke ngokwazi kwami, yona nto enginobufakazi kwayo. Kuthe eminyakeni emihlanu nje edlule wayesebuza kimi ukuthi basekhona yini izifundiswa ezihlaziyayo zibhekane nenkinga zize nexazululo. Ngathi mina hayi khona. Wakhipha 46,000. Wathi hamba ufune nendawo enhle la ngahlanganelwa khona bese ke kukhulunywe ngehloko. nezixazululo ababona ukuthi bangeza nazo. Saya lapha na okwakuthiwa i-water front, i-Protea waterfront e-Richards Bay. Bagcwala imfundiswa zasenyuvesi yakwaZulu nabanye sebangasekho nezitudeni ezasezenza iziqu zesibili e-university. Kwagcwala ngalelo langa, wafika ehamba nomkakhe uShila ehamba nendodakazi yakhe uNcamsini. Wafika wakhulunywa lapho kwaze kwashaya ihora lesihlanu kulokhulunyiwe elalele ngoba wayeyithanda kakhulu into eyisixazululo senkinga okubhekenwe nazo. Kuthe-ke sengumbona sixoxa ngathi mina hayi kufanele ubhale, mina sengibhale incwadi eziningi. Wathenga zonke incwadi engangibhalile, wathenga zonke, wathi kufanele uthinta uSihawu noSihawu ayethole le ncwadi. Ngamthinta yena lowo sihlalo wayithatha leyo ncwadi wayoyifunda. Ade emkhonzile impela kuSihawu. Manje-ke ngase ngithi akabhaleke yena incwadi ayishicilele yakhe. Bese sicinana lapho-ke naye. Ngase ngathi kuye, hayi ukuthatha ipeni, vula i-tape recorder, bese-ke ukhulume ngemuva kwamasonto amabili uzoyibona incwadi yakho seyikho. Wangibona wathi hayi sengihambe kakhulu. Sakhuluma-ke ngaloku kwalesifo, ngithi mina ngiyasaba lesifo ngoba mina ngidabhithi. Wathi hayi akothi mawuthinta nje bese ungithinte. Hawu silahlekelwe kakhulu-ke impela, siyakhala, angeke siqede konke ade kwenza. Ngiyahlephula nje lapha kokwemfundo engikwaziyo nokwaziwa nayintuthwane ukuthi ubeyikhonze kanjani. Nenhlanhla ingane zakhe zonke engizaziyo imfundo ezikwazile ukuthi zinamathele kuye, oNcamisile, olungile, nomfana lo wathi seya eCanada wathi akezela kimi ngimlekelele. Wafika lo mfana ohloniphayo waya phesheya, wathi noma esebuyile eCanada wangitshengisa ukuthi cha baba sihlangane ngizokutshengisa into engiyitholile. Kwakuhle, ingane zakhe wakhulisa ngenhlonipho eyisimangaliso. Mbomvu ngithi-ke silahlekelwe sonke, akwehlanga lungehlanga. Ngiyathokoza.
Siyathokoza Msuthu, amazwi osuwabekile ayasikhuthaza kakhulu. Nenselelo iphonsile nje Msuthu ukuthi kufanele sibhukule sibhale lencwadi le ngomlando kaMbomvu ngoba kukhulu esingakuthola. Ngiyacabanga nje usakhuluma ukuthi kwawona lamazwi esiwazwayo namhlanje ngoMbomvu singaqala khona sibhale bese siyahlehla-ke nempilo yakhe negalelo lakhe elibonakalayo kwezemfundo. uMbomvu was an all-rounder. He was a politician, a businessman. There's no point where you can say that he was this. He was almost an all-rounder. And we appreciate it very much, Professor Mapalala. Professor Mapalala is an old friend of Ben Ngubane from Empangeni. Mapalala was a professor at the University of Zululand, and he used to interact with Mbovu on many occasions in education initiative. And we are very grateful for this kind of reflection. We wish we could hear more and more and more, but we still have speakers that have been invited and have agreed to come and share their tribute with us. And I also want to appreciate the messages that are coming through. I've been reading some of the messages, and I encourage everyone who can write something, because we are recording these proceedings. Siyabonga kakhulu Msuthu, sibamba izandla zidlula ikhanda. Our next speaker is going to be Mr. Shongwe Ndlabula. Mr. Ndlabula is a Pretoria-based property developer. He met and befriended Ben at St. Thomas More Catholic Church in Centurion, where Ben had become a regular visitor during his sojourn in Pretoria. He is the immediate past president of St. Thomas More Men's Forum, which Ben has joined. Mhlambe we'll hear another side of ubaba uBen impilo ayiphilayo ngoba uhlalile kakhulu ePretoria when he was Minister of Arts and Culture, Science and Technology. And I just want to invite Ushongwe to pay his last tribute to Mbomvu.
Program Director.
Thank you.
My dear brothers and sisters in Christ. It was by a chance meeting that I got to meet Braben. Pardon me, I do not know Minister Ngubane. I do not know Premier Ngubane. I do not know Dr. Ngubane. I know Braben, Brother Ben. I know Ntate Ngubane, and at the best, Anubabu Ngubane. For it was at that level, far out of business, far removed out of the complexities of this world, that we got to meet. And it was a chance meeting in the sense that we had, as the Men's Forum, that I will talk about later, had visited a parish in Pretoria, and we actually met him there. He was surprised to see a lot of gentlemen. As you can see, I'm wearing this red tie and blue shirt. That's what actually attracted him to us. We're a group of about 20, and he wanted to know what this signified. At the end of the function, he called me and spoke to me about it, and after I explained and told him where we were based, he said, my goodness, that is actually much nearer to my home than where I am at the moment. Lo and behold, the following week, he was at our parish, and he became a regular visitor ever since. Now, having been delighted by our blue and red ties, blue shirt and red ties, he decided to become a member. And very briefly, I would like to tell you what this St. Thomas More Men's Forum is about. It is a group of Catholic men in fellowship. It is a group of Catholic men who collectively are encouraging one another to become the chief priests of our households. We've taken it upon ourselves to be the ones that draw our families closer to God. We have challenged ourselves to become very positive role models to our children and everybody else within the church. Our young people do not have positive role models. We have decided we shall take up that role. We have decided that we will be supportive of the church in service and financially supporting the church. We further engage in works of charity. And lastly, it is about fellowship, praying together. Now you could say, with all his qualifications, with all his busy business schedule, where did Braben get the time to come to church? Braben was that rare breed that knew and believed that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It was here, in fact, before I even talk about the personal relationship with him, let me just tell you about the anthem of this men's forum. It's a Sesotho hymn, which I will loosely translate into English. It basically appeals to the sweet heart of Jesus to give us, his servants, the strength to love and to serve him, and to do so till the time of our death. Braben believed in that, and he lived in that way till the time of his death. As Paul would have said to Timothy, he fought a good fight. He finished the race. And what awaits him is a crown of righteousness. It was here at St. Thomas, like I said, we developed a personal friendship beyond and outside the church. Quite often when he was away, he would give me a personal call just to find out, Shongwe, what's happening at church? Bring me up to speed. There would even be times when men would be requested to make contributions. Even when an account number for the forum was provided, in many instances, he would insist on giving me the money so that I can pay on his behalf. Quite often when he was away and visitors were coming to his house, he would actually phone me, Shongwe, I'm expecting people at my house. Can you please slaughter a goat for me? I will come and pick it up. Shongwe, I need some chicken, Makaya chicken. Please organize so many for me. I will come and pick up. It was at that level that I interacted with him. But more importantly, whenever he came home to my house, he would find me with the type of people that I would call commoners. He would engage and interact like he was actually at their level. He would never say, and I would never tell who he was. They would only realize after he had left that, oh, but that was the man that was at Shongwe's house when they see him on TV. Then they would ask me, Kanti Shongwe, who is that one? That was the type of person that Braben was, very humble. Now, as men of the church, we want to send our condolences and deepest sympathies to the family. Ben was one with us in the body of Christ through our baptism. We join and unite our prayers to that of his family. We ask Mother Mary, the Comforter, to intercede on his behalf for God to accept him into the eternal kingdom. We also ask Mother Mary, the Mother of Mercy, to intercede on behalf of the family for them to find comfort. I want to address my last portion to Mrs. Ngubane in particular, program director. In all those instances at church, when we would see Mr. Ngubane, he would always be with Umama hand in hand. They were an inspiration to many young married couples. Just looking at them holding hands, coming to church and receiving communion was an inspiration to many. I am one of them. Seeing their sense of dress, impeccably dressed all the time, with dignity, was indicative of many a people how to present themselves in church. Last night, I had the opportunity to reflect at the the night vigil of one of our colleagues, also in the men's forum, who coincidentally died on the same day with Braben. And in consoling the family, I had the following statements to make, which I would also like to repeat here. And that is to ask the family to turn their attention to Jesus Christ for comfort. In a number of chapters in the Gospel of John, this is what Jesus Christ says about himself. He says, I'm the bread of life. Now, just as bread sustains physical life, so God offers and sustains spiritual life. In times of need, Ngubane, the children and family, I direct you to Jesus Christ. Jesus says, I'm the light of the world. In moments of darkness, remember Christ offers himself as a guide. He says, I'm the door of the sheep. Jesus protects his followers and as shepherds protect their flock. Please do not become disgruntled and leave the church. Jesus Christ says, I'm the resurrection and the life. Death is not the final word for those who believe in Christ. Much as we might be sad that we are losing Braben, remember all the pleasant memories you've shared with him. May I conclude by saying, may his soul rest in peace. May the family be comforted. Let us give thanks to God for the privilege to have known Braben. I thank you. God be with you all.
Thank you very much. Amen to that. And you have reflected on the other side of him, a Christian. We all recall that his elder brother was also a Catholic priest. And we are a family of Christians, and we really appreciate the words of comfort and that show. We will proceed with our program. We have May Penny Nagoa, who's the wife of Professor Nagoa from Japan. Penny Nagoa is director of Eureka Japan, a Japanese consultancy company. She worked as a managing director since 1996 to 2016, providing consultancy and advice to international and Japanese organizations on planning, management, implementation of international cooperation projects. Her clients included the World Health Organization, WHO, the University of Tokyo, private foundation, Japanese prefectural and city government, and NGOs. She has published articles on women's health issues and reports of several international conferences and seminars on women and health in order to promote common understanding between medical professionals and lay people. In 2010, she was commended by the governor of Quang Nam, Vietnam, for her achievement in Quang Nam's regional development. Mrs. Nagoa is a wife of Professor Masafun Nagoa, and they have been blessed by 2 children and 2 grandchildren. We will now invite Penny to pay her last respect to Baba Ben Ngubane.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Very good. Good evening, everybody, friends. Here in Japan, it is 11:32 in the evening, so I say good evening. First of all, I would like to express my deepest condolence to Sheila, Pamela, and all the members of Ben's family. As many of Ben's friends already talked about him in details, his contributions and personal charms, I will very, very briefly speak because I share with you all of them. I am a Japanese friend of Ben since his ambassadorship here in Tokyo. The moment I met Ben, it was Masafumi, my husband, who introduced us. His warm and caring personality captured my heart. It was always a big pleasure to see him. And every time he came to our house for dinner, we exchanged our views and perspectives in so many variety of subjects, starting from, say, gender gap in medicine to even to Catholicism. Ben's wide and deep knowledge did not fail to help my understanding, but as I remember now, it was more of his modest attitude of attentive listening to the other, which led me find out the answer to the issue. I do not know how long it will take for us to overcome the loss of our dearest friend, an exquisite gentleman, Ben. May Ben's spirit rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much for such kind words. And what you have highlighted was that Ben was a distinguished gentleman. We really appreciate that a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Benny. Our next speaker is Ms. Samara Raghavan. Ms. Samara Raghavan is the daughter of Chingai Rogan Raghavan, a longtime comrade and a friend of the late Dr. Ben Ngubane. They first met as students in the 1960s at the University of Natal when they cut their teeth in student politics. She will be speaking on behalf of her father. She is currently a graduate student in clinical psychology at the University of Johannesburg. We also remember that Baba Ben was a vice president with student organization in NUSAS, where he served with Ubuntu Bonke, Stephen Biko at the University of Natal in Durban. And I just want to welcome you, Samara, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you. My deepest condolences to the Ngubane family for their immeasurable loss. We are all living in a world where grief has become the norm. It is a privilege to speak on behalf of my father about his great friend, Dr. Baldwin Ben Ngubane. A friend that even through my father's recent diagnosis of dementia, he still called frequently and tells any young new comrade that he began his activist journey with Steve Biko and Ben Ngubane at his side. While their commitment to fighting inequality and injustice initially drew them together as part of the Black students movement over 55 years ago in the balmy weather of KZN at the Allen Taylor residence because they were not permitted on the Howard College campus, my father often spoke about their shared love of humor and levity at a time when South Africa was shrouded in the darkness and pain of apartheid. This ability to connect on a level beyond political affiliation is what created a lifelong bond, deeper than comradeship, between my father and Dr. Ngubane. It created something almost more important, the power and magic of a committed friendship, something I would like to talk more about. There are few people who can say they maintained a friendship for nearly 6 decades, particularly when that friendship spanned continents, political differences, innumerable change in policy and praxis, new families created, and the overall speed that life often takes as we walk its path. Perhaps it is because they met in the prime of their youth, and when my father went into exile in 1968, he took the people who meant the most to him with him in his heart. Or perhaps it was because the Ngubanes spent time with my grandparents in Isipingo and shared their love of curry and rice, which continued even after my father left South Africa, as his father ran the canteen at medical school, feeding many a hungry student daily with sumptuous and spicy fare. After returning from exile in 1991, my father and Dr. Ngubane rekindled their friendship in person. I recall how our families would bump into each other at the airport, paths intersecting, stars aligning, and as we went on our way, my father would launch into a story of him and Ben in the good old days. Or the phone calls from Japan that Dr. Ngubane would often make, lighting up my father's face, a voice from home, from times past, located in the present. While my knowledge of Dr. Ngubane was mostly through the stories and eyes of my father, I wish only all of us the same moments of joy that they experienced while orbiting each other in this lifetime, particularly in these painful times within our country now. As a testament to their enduring bonds, my father will continue to speak fondly of Ben and his comrade in arms. It is my hope and prayer that ties that bind the Ngubane and the Ragavan families will remain intact. Hamba Kakhle, Dr. Baldwin Ben Ngubane, we will miss you.
Siyabonga kakhulu, thank you very much. You represented your dad very well, and we really appreciate it. Friends, family, we now have one more speaker, Sis Thandi Olin. Sis Thandi is married with 3 adult children and 1 granddaughter. She is a human rights activist whose career of over 35 years spanned the roles of attorney, mediator, arbitrator, facilitator, dispute resolution practitioner, public speaker, executive management, and director of companies. Sis Thandi happens to be a fellow board member with Baba Open for Toyota South Africa, and they have served together for the past 7 years. People who have read his obituary, they have noticed that Oba Ben was also a board member of a boxing team. And that's what I was saying earlier, that he was an all-rounder. You can't just restrict him to his medical profession, but he was all over. And we very much appreciate the presence of Sis Thandi to reflect on the life and celebrate the life of Baba Open Ngubane. I give the floor to you, Sis Thandi Olin, to address us.
Thank you, Mr. MC, Prof. Ngubane. And I greet everybody who have come to celebrate the life of Dr. B. I would also like to give my condolences and the condolences of my family, the Toyota family, led by Dr. Van Zyl, who is the executive chair, as well as the president and CEO, Andrew Kirby, and the whole of the Toyota family, to Sis Sheila, as well as the children and grandchildren. On the one hand, this is a sad moment, but on the other, it's a time to celebrate. Dr. B would have been 80 in October. Depending on your perspective, you can say that he was still a very young man. But as a cricket fan, I would say that he has had a good innings. I doubt if there is anyone of our generation who does not know Dr. B. He motivated a lot of young people, particularly young medical students in the 70s and 80s. This is including my husband, who also went to Natal Medical School. That is why all of us have known Dr. Ben for a long time. He has come in and out of our lives, but I was very fortunate to spend 7 years of Dr. Ben's latter years at Toyota South Africa, both of us being independent directors of Toyota South Africa. This was between 2010 and 2017 when he retired. I had joined the board of Toyota when he was the South African ambassador to Japan. In 2005, Toyota, in recognition of the good work that it's done in South Africa, took a group of its dealers as well as directors to Japan. And that is where we met Dr. Ben when he was the ambassador, and he welcomed us with very warm arms. He made us to feel at home. One of the things that I immediately recognized was how he was held in high regard in Japan amongst Japanese politicians, government, as well as business community. He was also highly regarded among the diplomatic corps that were in Japan. This continued even after he left Japan in 2008. Everybody has talked about the highest order that anyone could be awarded in Japan. And this was done in 2010 when he had just joined the Toyota board. Those are some of the ways in which I recognized and realized how Dr. Ben had contributed to the economy of this country. Dr. B was a valued and valuable member of the Toyota South Africa board. He had a very deep understanding of the Japanese culture, and he married his knowledge of South Africa and its culture with that of the Japanese. And this helped us in the board to navigate the cultures and ensure that we were able to ensure the business of Toyota South Africa was aligned to the TMC business in a way that I would not have expected, and in a way I didn't see in the other boards that I serve on. A lot has been said about Dr. B, and I can not traverse all the things that we had been together in the short years that I spent with him at Toyota. I can endorse that Dr. B was a passionate person. He was passionate about education, transformation, skills development, and sustainable economic development. He also enjoyed life enormously. I recall when we traveled to Europe again to celebrate another milestone of Toyota. We went with the dealers on a cruise. And I must say, those were the perks that one enjoyed with Toyota South Africa, as Toyota South Africa has been the #1 car sales company in the country since inception. When we were on the cruise, my husband and I spent a lot of time with Dr. B and Sis Sheila. We had marvelous times. I attest to the person who said that Dr. Ben loved his food, and he loved good food. He dressed well, he could relax, he could enjoy and be just a father and grandfather. So we really appreciate the time, Sis Sheila, that you have given to Dr. B. We appreciate the time that Dr. B has spent with you and has given us as South African the best of himself. His life is one that is well lived, and he contributed immensely to the development of this country and to ensuring that it is held in high regard across the globe. Alale ngoxolo umbomvu. Siyabulela.
Thank you very much, Sister Andy. You have opened up another page of him, but still reflecting on how healthy he was. 79 years was still a reasonable year, because if you consider his elder brothers, they were over 80, 84, they lived beyond 80 years. And we were also hoping that he will also live beyond 80. I remember last year we celebrated his 79-year birthday, and he made a very stunning talk and focusing on the future, not on the present. And I was very much impressed, and we still have memories of that day and the pictures that we took on that day. But we were very grateful to have lived with Ubaba Uben. I like the way you address him, Dr. B. Ben was his nickname because his name, Sipo and Baldwin, did not become prominent, but the Ben part and Dr. B part became very popular. I just want to check whether Dr. Paul Tabete has joined us, because his name also appeared on the program. Dr. Tabete, are you here?
I'm with you, Mbomvu. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Siyabonga kakhulu.
Yeah.
Siyazi ukuthi you are a dear friend of Ubaba Ben, and we are grateful to have you. Dr. Tabete has known Dr. B since medical school days in the late 60s, and he has been a colleague and also a friend to date. And we are very pleased to have you, although it's a sad day where we are reflecting on his life, and we want to give you the floor to pay your last respect to Dr. Ben.
Thank you, Program Director. Firstly, I would like to, on behalf of my family, to express our deepest sympathies to Sis Sheila, the children, and the whole Mbomvu clan. We are with you in this difficult time of your lives. Thank you for giving this opportunity just to share a few tributes about Ben. The good thing about being the last speaker on the program is that most of the things that could be said have been said, and I endorse, especially Ms. Ragavan, who spoke about the medical school days. That is where I actually wanted to reflect on. We met at medical school the last half of the 1960s. Now, if I do sound a bit like ancient, you'll forgive me. But yeah, you stay in one residence for 7 years together. At the end of that period, those bonds of friendship really become so deep. And as the lady alluded to it, the friendship between her father and Ben, they're enduring. So I've had the pleasure of being around in KZN and associating with Ben all these years. Our times were very interesting times at Allen Taylor Residence. And I may say, very historic. It has been alluded to the fact that Ben, at that point around the 70s, or rather 60, at the end of the 60s, was elected to the leadership of NUSAS. And the prevailing feeling at the time was that this was a great achievement for one of us like Ben to be on that leadership of NUSAS, because NUSAS was supposed to be the only student body, national student body, that was the mouthpiece of all students, university students in South Africa. But right at that time, a debate arose, and students were questioning if it was still relevant for NUSAS to represent Black students. And so the debate was quite intense. And Baldwin, of course, he was known to be a very formidable debater. But at the same time, he was open-minded. So, you know, when this movement came, there were questions about, is this not apartheid in reverse? Are we abandoning non-racialism? But obviously the guys had done their homework, and in that leadership you had Steve Biko, as it has been alluded, Aubrey Mkwape, and them, and they were able to convince most students, most of us, that indeed the time had arrived for us not to rely on other people to achieve our independence, to achieve our aspirations, and that the time had arrived to form a new organization, which would include Blacks, and I'm using Blacks in its generic form. And I don't think the question was ever answered if white students would be welcome to the movement, but basically it was for those the disadvantaged students, or the disadvantaged Black students who needed a platform where they could, on their own, try and achieve their own freedom. So it was interesting. But in the end, the Black consciousness movement prevailed. And it has been mentioned that Ben was one amongst the leadership that was in the forefront of this struggle. Fast forward to 1975, and I go into private practice as a general practitioner in Mandeni, and Ben is already practicing Mpangeni. And so our friendship continued, now as professionals. I can say that Ben was a good doctor, and his patients loved him. I'm in Mandeni, it's about maybe 60, 70 k's from Mpangeni. But when I arrived in Mandeni, there were so many people who were Ben's patients. They used to travel all the way to Mpangeni to see Ben. Now, what was amazing about him was the energy. You know, the man was hardworking. I could never do what he used to do. He was a member of the KwaZulu those days, pre-94. He was a member of the KwaZulu Legislative Assembly. And Ben would see his patients in the morning and dash to Ulundi to be in that assembly. Return from Ulundi and go back to the rooms. I don't know what time he used to finish consulting. I used to finish at about 8, 9. I'm sure I used to finish at midnight. And at the time, of course, he was the first black medical practitioner in Mpangeni. So you can imagine the load that he had to carry. I'm sure he was the district surgeon, he was everything. So I say I could never do what he used to do, but that's the energy that he had, that's the dedication that he had for his profession. And even much earlier, you could see that the man was destined to be a leader. So it was not surprising later on in his life that he actually left politics, or rather left medicine, and became what he ended up becoming in politics and achieving all the achievements that we've heard about. I see my time is up, but finally then, to Ben, may his soul and the souls of all faithful departed rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Sitting isiZulu isinamva liyabukwa. You really made an impression as the last speaker of the day. And you have reflected on your experience with him, Alan Taylor, those years of apartheid and struggle. And he was the vice president of the National Union of South African Students, UNOSAS. And it's ironic that at the end, he became the member of the University of KwaZulu-Natal Council. So it shows that he was a dynamic leader, a dynamic hero of the Ngubanes and of the people of KwaZulu-Natal. And we are very grateful for that. We want to say thank you very much for the kind words. We are running out of time now, but emdenini sithi amabomvu awalale ngenxeba, umyaluza kamatomela kaNdlovu, unomafu ngcokumane kaMbomvu, indoda kanyamazane kaSodlelezi esadla amabele amhlophe sawashiya enkehlane. Nangu ngisho engasekho bolokhu bethi nangu Mbomvu, nangu Mbomvu. On that note, I would like to request my brother Unhlanhla to give us a vote of thanks and make announcements for tomorrow's funeral.
Thank you very much, Estihau. As a family, we would like to thank all the presenters for taking their time to honor the memory of Ubabu Dr. Ngubane. We did share Ngubane with you while he was with us on this earth. We are now celebrating his life with you. And we are comforted by your words and also the good memories that you had with him. It's very, very difficult, obviously, to do all the summary about the achievement and all what Dr. Ngubane in his 79 years of life did achieve. But through your memories, you've been able to paint a picture of a man who was dedicated to his country. You've been able to paint a picture of a man who had time to share with the nation. But we also like to emphasize a family that he was also a man who had also time. He gave us time, all family members across. He gave also his time. He was a man. I stay in Hillcrest. He would drive from Ballito and stay with us here till 9 o'clock, very late in the evening. and still go back and drive to Balicho after spending almost the whole day with us. Similar applies across all his children. In that regard, we really thank you, colleagues, and also people who are watching today. In terms of the funeral arrangement, the funeral is tomorrow. We'll be sending also the live stream given over the difficult times, which are issues of COVID and the restriction that applies when it comes to issues of COVID and the funerals. The funeral is now an official state funeral. We thank the province of KZN for granting Ubaba that honor. It will be streamed live in the government channels, but it starts tomorrow at 10 o'clock. It's 2 hours, I understand those are restrictions that are given. On that note, thank you very much. And then we'll be having a prayer that will be come after I've completed here. And then as we close, and we thank you for your attendance, and we're closing then the day. Thank you, colleagues, and thanks everyone for attending.
I'm